Team chemistry. What is it? Why is it important? And what do people mean when they say it? You ever find yourself just wanting a little bit more Mayday? Well, we now have a Substack. We're gonna have all kinds of articles, a newsletter to keep you updated on everything we are making over here at Mayday Media each week. And if you choose to become a paid supporter, you get all of that, plus direct DMs to me, so you'll be able to ask questions and maybe make it into the next Q&A episode, and even exclusive discounts on merch drops. So subscribe to the Substack and keep up to date with everything we got going. Thanks. I feel like there comes a time where there are articles analyzing team chemistry. It is blamed for teams that are really good on paper not being as good out on the field for any stretch of time. Then start to look into the clubhouse and whether or not we're letting the manager let the guys run around too much, which is one of the dumbest explanations I've ever heard because they don't have as much of effect on that stuff as people think. We talk about how important it is and whether or not it's even real or not. And I can tell you with absolute certainty, in my experience, team chemistry is one of the most important things. It is 50% mental, the Yogi Berra quote about mentality and things. Team chemistry is the mental game of the team. You have your physical play, and then the way you guys operate together is the mental side of the game, and it's just as important, or even more important than how talented your team are. Team is, you gotta pay attention to it, and there's certain things that every team with good chemistry has. Now, they all look different, but there's some buckets or categories that you want to look at when determining whether or not you have a chemistry problem or just a execution problem. What prompted this idea was earlier this week, there was an article released by beat writer for the Minnesota Twins. They're going to be part of this show a lot today. Dan Hayes, great guy, know him personally, does great work. And he reported on that trade deadline day and the chaos that was happening for the Twins. Now, and here's what it is. Twins Griffin Jack requested a trade and what I learned about the club's fire sale, part 1. First things first, Griffin Jack's asking for a trade. People asking for trades in baseball is actually really rare because of the kind of, we don't have the control over our own careers until we're close to free agent to do this stuff. If you're becoming a free agent next year, that's probably the only time you'd ever have a real good chance of that even being listened to because they don't need to do anything. There's nothing you can do about it. It's not like football and basketball in that way. Griffin Jacks, though, allegedly asked for this trade on the last day of the season. And here's what went into that kind of story. Now, I didn't know exactly what had happened until last night. And I can say with absolute certainty that I would have been just as mad or madder at the situation than he was. Griffin Jacks is asked to come in a game where they are getting beat and they are down by 7 runs, okay? In those situations, when you're the setup guy, one of the better starters or the better pitchers for your team, you don't anticipate going in that game because that's not your role usually. Sometimes you just have to go out and pitch on a night that maybe you wouldn't pitch in just to cover some other guys, okay? We are on the deadline day, so that's where this is interesting. They bring him in down 7. He immediately gives up 3 runs. It's fairly economical. I don't know exactly how many pitches he threw, but I believe it was in the low teens to those 3 hitters. So he's not being taxed, but it's very clear they were thinking about possibly trading him. Rocco Baldelli was stuck between a rock and a hard place a little bit in decision-making because other guys in that bullpen, they were trading pretty much 5 of the 8 guys out there. So you're very limited in the guys that you could use knowing that that was possibly going to happen because if you get a guy hurt or he goes out and struggles or whatever, it hurts his trade value in real time. They want to avoid that. That seems stupid. You got to just play the game. We got to let upstairs be upstairs until the game's over. I think that's the way to handle this, but that's not how they handled it. So Griffin goes in the game, he gives up 3 hits. There's a guy on first and third with no outs and a run is scored. It is now an 8-run lead for the other team. And what happens? Rocco comes out and pulls Griffin Jacks, right? I don't want to use you. I'm not trying to tax you here. I'm pulling you out. The problem is there are 2 runners on base for a position player to come in the game. So he brings a position player in to face professional hitters with no outs, guys first, third. Guess what happens? He gives up a homer and cashes in 2 more runs for Griffin Jacks, a guy who's already struggled with those crooked innings and his ERA is ballooned even though he's been really nasty this year. This is a problem for relievers, is avoiding getting your inherited runs cashed, it could really change the course of your season if you keep getting someone coming in behind you that gives up all your runs. And when it's a position player, it's almost guaranteed. So what he saw was like, I got to go in here. You're just going to throw me under the bus and be like, we'll just cash these 2 runs. Who cares? Who cares? He's a free agent after this year. Actually, I believe he has 1 more year. Either as a free agent or it's getting close. This is an important year for him, okay? If that happened, and I am a huge fan of Rocco Baldelli. He's one of my best managers I've ever had. I really like him, and I really like the Twins organization. But this situation was handled terribly. I got like viscerally, I was like, oh my God, you can't just do that. Like, I don't care what you guys are trying to do with trades. I don't care. You don't get to do that to me in my career. I give up the hits. Let me get a couple outs at least instead of facing 3 hitters. And then you just they all score. Just 3 extra runs, no outs on my ERA. I'll see you later. And that's what prompted the ask for a trade. And I don't blame him. I would have been livid because we're seeing what's happening with all the other trades. He probably saw the writing on the wall with how the team's getting dismantled. So he's like, you know what? Screw this. That makes me so mad. That shows a complete lack of thinking about me in any of that way this affects me. And I am just a number on a page. And that makes me so mad. And then it made me mad. And I would have done the exact same thing. Now, I will push back on one thing. There's a common rumor going around that he went into the dugout and was like, I want to be traded. That is not how it worked. He went in, him and Rocco, got into it, did not go great. Then after the game, he called his agent and his agents did it. So just clarifying, that's what happened by, all accounts from the article from Dan Hayes that I read, okay? That all happened. That is a great example of not great chemistry, not great communication, which is something the Minnesota Twins, in my opinion, and anecdotally from a lot of other players, are very good at, is communication from top to bottom, okay? They do a good job historically of communicating what they're doing and why to the people it affects. It's something that I've always appreciated about them, but they dropped the ball so hard on that one that I genuinely don't know what they were thinking, to the point where I think they were just like, we have to do this. And you don't. You can risk him throwing 10 more pitches. You don't have to do that. And it's not fair, and it's not great signal that you care about Griffin. He's been there for his whole career. So I did not like that. And then we saw the 11 guys get fire sailed, and we are where we are. So what does this have to do with team chemistry? That is an example that I just wanted to touch on before we get into that part. It is an example of poorly executed communication that hurts team chemistry. Not only did that piss him off, that probably pissed a bunch of people off. But through the rest of this situation, there were some really great examples of communication. And that is one of the most important things you need when having good communication. Additionally, we have the Carlos Correa situation where he was in active communication with Derek Falvey in the front office that he was open to waiving his no trade if it's to Houston. They were clear on that, and it got done. He said, if you are going to tear down the team, I am willing to do this thing. And that made Derek Falvey's job a lot easier. There's no guessing, and you know that everyone's on the same page, and you know what the outcome will be if it happens. That is a great example of good communication. That is things that they do fairly well usually. Additionally, Joe Ryan was upset all day because he heard a rumor that he was going to the Red Sox. It did not coalesce. And he just thought, oh, if this is out there, I'm definitely getting traded. Did he get traded? No, but he was worried about it and uncertain about it all day. And guess what happened? Derek Falvey said, hey, you're not getting traded. That trade never even really coalesced. And that rumor was based on very little. We really didn't get very close. Maybe last 10 minutes of deadline, we really tried a little bit, but we didn't get close. And I'm sorry that you had to deal with that. That happened too. So that's another great example of well held. They just dropped the ball on Griffin Jax. And that makes me mad still. I'm still mad about it. I hate thinking about it. 2 of the 3 situations are, if you're going to have to do this, that is the way that players would like it to be done. If you have to get rid of me, talk to me about it and explain it to me. And if I disagree, at least you explain it to me and just said, go on and we don't have to deal with you anymore, which is what most of the time happens. So the Minnesota Twins historically have had very, very good team chemistry And they played up to, people enjoy playing there because they feel like they can go talk to Derek Valley. They feel like they can walk into Rocco Baldelli's office and explain what they want or what they need. And they feel like they can talk to Pete Mackey, the pitching coach, when they want to make a change, try something, or do something. That is the way they operate, and I noticed it when I was there, and I always enjoyed it. And I'm very disappointed that one of those three guys got treated the way that he was. So let's talk a little bit about what goes into team chemistry. How does your team work together, and how do you mesh, and how do you make decisions? And there's a bunch of things that go into that, which we'll get into just a moment. You get really good at intuitively establishing goals that your team wants to do, and then everyone figures out their role in how to get to that goal. That seems very simple, but when you have lots of young guys, when you have inexperienced guys, or you have guys are kind of up and down and really worried about keeping their job, sometimes it's really hard to guess what those things are when you don't have the experience. The onus then goes on the team that you're on to tell you and be like, this is what our expectations are. And if you exceed those expectations, that's a big thumbs up. But if you do your job, your chance of staying on this team are really good, and we will be a better team long term, and you will have a better career because you're able to identify those things and do them. I have the Dodgers here. They're notorious for being good at this, being very clear, open, and honest, and communicative about what they want, what they see you doing, why they think you're valuable, and then what you are going to be called to do. That is what team chemistry is, just on the field. And then on the backside, the players have to enjoy being in the same room together. And that's not true everywhere. You know, you're going to run into guys who just suck. Sometimes you're going to be in clubhouses where you really just try to ignore somebody, or when they walk in a room, you find yourself wanting to leave that room. Of course, that's going to happen. It's dozens of people in and out all the time. There's going to run into people you don't like. And of course, I had a bunch of those. Not a ton. It was like maybe a couple on the worst teams, and most teams were great. But it does happen. And if your team all likes each other, that is something that is really helpful. And how do you do that? You just kind of lean into the things that you have fun. So why is team chemistry so important? What does it do for you? The game is fueled by emotion and adrenaline. When you are emotionally driven and adrenaline driven, you play every day. You're tired. You're physically tired. You have to work through being tired all the time. And adrenaline and emotion are the best ways to do that. Whether or not it seems bottled up or whatever, it is super important. Now, if you are operating in that space, you gotta feel comfortable and safe to do it. Like if you're out there like, I can't get too emotional, or I can't have too much adrenaline, or I can't do certain things, if that's just a general feeling because you're new, you're young, you don't know what you're doing, you don't think you belong there, nobody acknowledges you.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really.
Whatever it is, if you don't have that, it's really hard to go down and reach for those things. Teams that are good, everyone on their team feels like they can be themselves, or a version of themselves that makes them successful on a baseball field. That's important for chemistry. That is done by some of the categories we're going to talk about in a second. And secondly, focus. You got to be able to focus, and it comes down to being comfortable again. If you're worried about other things, you can't focus on the things that matter. Heard that before? Yeah, that's called life. You need those two things, and the best teams foster those two things. They say, hey man, go do what you got to do. We got your back. Like if that's the way you're going to operate, you're going to get the best version of those guys because they're not worried about anything but baseball. And that's what you want to get. That's what you want to foster. Sounds very simple. Sounds very easy. But some people have things going on at home. Even when there's stuff going on outside of the field that the team may not know about, the least that you can do is have the clubhouse feel like a place that they belong. Because if you don't feel like you belong in either place, that's when things get hairy. I know that from experience from time to time in my career. Let's talk a little bit about the things that all teams with good chemistry rather have. I found a great article from a website that I actually never seen before, but I agreed with the way it was broken up, so I'm going to reference it here. This is the focus, by the way. You got to focus your hand and on. Congratulations, USA women's track team. You guys are really good. But this article by Amy Watkins was on a website called newarena.com. I believe it's just a blog. Inside Clubhouse, what makes team culture great, or AKA chemistry. So I just want to give her a shout out. The way that this was broken down, I thought was a great way to do it. Number one, you need leadership. You need a veteran in a clubhouse that you can defer to when you don't know the answer to stuff. There has to be guys in a clubhouse that if you're like, hey man, where am I supposed to be for this thing? What time should it be? Like, how does this guy operate? How do I pitch to this guy? Whatever. There has to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys in a clubhouse where there's certain groups of people in that clubhouse that feel comfortable going to them. and talking to them and deferring to them when things get hairy. When the team's not doing well or the team's doing good, you have the center of your flying V moving you towards your goals. Tom Brady. Say what you want about Tom Brady. The guy led. That's number one. Leaders are important. A great example was in 2022. We had Max Scherzer with the pitchers and Francisco Lindor with the hitters. And that was just, at least as the regular season went. And of course, we didn't get the job done in the playoffs. But the reason we were so consistently good in the playoffs is because we had those two guys that we trusted to lead us in the correct direction. If any of us hadn't had any experience, those two guys have had pretty much all the experiences. And we deferred to them, and it works. And they, by all accounts, still are doing that on the teams they are on right now. Number two, open communication and dialogue. So we got the Spurs here. They had that amazing run. Anecdotally, we know that Popovich is a great coach, but we also know that all of these guys had their own input into how they should win games and what they can do. Everyone was always on the same page, both off the field and on the field. And that is not as common in baseball as you think. There are teams where you're looking around, you're like, I've never seen my owner before. I don't know what he wants. Or I've never seen my GM. I've never spoken to my president of baseball operations. If you don't ever talk to them, you're just guessing at that point. You're guessing what they want. If you're guessing what they want all the time, it's really hard to guess right. And so communication, treating people like adults and just saying, hey, this is what we expect. And then if you choose to get rid of them, trade them, release them, whatever, you can say, we had the expectations, those expectations were not met. Unfortunately, this is what we have to do. And it softens the blow. It's understandable across the board. You might still be angry. You might not agree, but at least you knew going in. There's so many moving pieces. This is one of the biggest things that teams struggle with is how do we do this effectively? And believe it or not everyone's very personable. Not everyone's very, very good at communicating these things. And they're not comfortable doing it. And when that happens, the team chemistry suffers. Number three, you need to have an identity. Now, I know this is a little bit of a gimmick, but they had an identity. Look at this smile. That's a happy dude. That's a guy who loves where he is. These guys are genuinely having a blast. That's what it takes. You have to have a team identity, and that comes down to, this is our goal. This is how we win games. We hit homers. We steal bases. We do this thing. We do that thing. That's baseball, baby. And then the players buy into it. That's good coaching. That takes good executives. And that's one thing that I like. I think the Mets are moving in the right direction, is I think they are getting that expectation and that communication and that identity as a group. This is how we win baseball games and will into the future. It's becoming year after year, not just year and then changes the next year. Like we're searching. We actually found something that works. And teams like the Astros that went to the ALCS 7 years in a row, they had an identity to where when a new guy joined the team, he fit right into that identity and he got it right away. And sometimes that's done through fun stuff like this. It's done through like having group outings or going and doing things or whatever. Like everyone latches onto a song, a win song, all that stuff factors in. If you have good stuff that everyone likes and it participates in, that is great team identity together, okay? Last two, inclusion. This kind of is attached to the leadership side, but it's very important that the rookie feels that he is valuable to a team and that is communicated to him through a guy who is a veteran. When a rookie walks into a clubhouse and has anticipated that moment for his entire life, getting to the major leagues, and feels like, I can't say anything, that guy might not be very good right away. That's what's changed a lot in baseball. Now, there is some nice razzing hazing that is part of that inclusion. Like literally messing with them is what brings them into the group. That is a very dude thing to do. That still exists. I want to be clear. We're not like, hey man, you're part of the team. We love you. Like it's not like that. It's like a, sup idiot, welcome. Don't mess this up. But in reality, it's like, you got this, right? It's like there's a fine line and some guys are good at it, some guys aren't. That is the way it is. You got to bring them in as quickly as you can so that when they go out in the field, they don't feel like they're an imposter, because imposter syndrome in professional sports is freaking everywhere. And so that is what I mean by inclusion. Additionally, when the predominantly English speakers and the Spanish speakers like each other, have fun, and there's it's a combined group, because as you can imagine, those groups separate a little bit because one group wants to speak Spanish and speak fast and say everything they want and like mess around with the jokes from where they're from, whatever. And they kind of click. And of course they click out a little bit. But if it's not like a we don't like each other situation, we like each other, we just are more comfortable being where we communicate clearly most of the time, and then we come together and have a lot of fun. That is, again, bringing people into your culture a little bit. That you don't have to be like, you are one of us now, but a little bit of overlapping of cultures is also a great indicator. And then the last piece that you need in order to make this whole thing work, you gotta have some gosh darn fun. You gotta tape up Pedro Martinez. You gotta, again, this all comes down to comfort. This is a great example. When teams are having fun, all of those other boxes have been checked, right? So you're gonna read articles. You're gonna read, are the coaches like letting them run wild in the clubhouse? That's not their jurisdiction. The clubhouse is for the players. It's up to them to do that, and it's leadership that needs this to happen. If coaches try to make it happen, it does not work. It does not work. It does not work. I've been on teams where the manager would constantly choose the music, and we hated it. It drove us crazy. We're like, stop changing the music. You're not a player. We love you, but God damn it. Get out of here. Get out. That isn't real. And then you're going to hear that a lot. No one likes that. Managers, it's very hard to do that because in reality, they're going to have to make hard decisions that are not the decision that you'd make as a player at some point. They will. They're going to have to. There has to be a level of separation. And the guys that are good enough in saying, hey, I'm going to come in here and yell at you if you need fire lit. You guys are being stupid for a while. But I'm not going to make a habit out of it. I'm not going to hang out in here all day with you all the time because this is your place and I am your dad in a lot of ways. At the end of the day, team chemistry, it is very important. It is one of the most important things. And it can be fostered very easily by some guys who carry some weight in that clubhouse. The Joe Mauers, the Torrey Hunters, Max Scherzers, Francisco Lindors of the world, taking initiative and saying, this is how I have fun. What do you guys got? So that everyone's out there trying to do it. That's the key, and that's where it starts. It starts with the guys who've been around. Just like when Bryce Harper got in Rob Manfred's face and everyone's like, dude, you make tons of money. Why are you complaining? He's not. What he's doing is leading and speaking up on behalf of the guys that don't feel comfortable doing it. That is what he's doing. And that is the example of what leadership looks like in baseball and how you build great team chemistry. So let me know what you guys think in the chat, in the comments, everywhere, because I hope this clears it up. I hope this is a good point of reference if you were wondering, does my team have good chemistry or not? Because if you can point out the guys that do some of these things well, maybe that's not the issue. Maybe it's just we got to focus a little bit more on the field.